Hey, this is Jack, and this video is called When Does an Emotionally Unavailable Guy Finally Become Available? All right, I'm going to get straight into it. So if you've had the experience of trying to relate with an emotionally unavailable guy, or perhaps this has been a continued experience that you've had, I know that can be incredibly painful and disconcerting and can probably have you reduce trust in the process of being able to find someone that actually is available. So if any of that's going on, this video will help you. I want to start off by sharing 3 types of guys that could eventually become emotionally available. But really what this depends upon is they're doing some inner work, right? Them actually transforming, coming to a real clarity and realization in their own lives. So none of this is actually about you doing something that then has him be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I've been emotionally unavailable, now I'm going to be available. It's actually more about a transformation on his side. What you can be available for is noticing, has that kind of transformation taken place? Is there something substantively different on offer now than has been on offer in the past? So that's really the extent of your involvement. But I'll always say to people, you don't really want a PhD in emotionally unavailable men, right? So when you go and start thinking about what PhD you want to study, you don't want to make a PhD called When Does an Emotionally Unavailable Guy Finally Become Available? You don't need to be majoring in that, right? You can actually be quicker to notice, oh, this guy isn't available. And I can say some more things about that if you like. I've got other videos on that as well. But do you notice that? And that's the point that you trust yourself, that you don't actually need to engage more, right? You are not a mentor, counsel, therapist, or some other thing to emotionally unavailable guys. Let them pay and get that in the marketplace, and let's have you majoring in what you're actually looking for in relationship, which is some kind of sustained emotional connection, right, with a guy that is emotionally available. So 3 types of guys that could become more emotionally available. So number 1 is Peter Pan guy, right? So Peter Pan guy, Peter Pan lives in a constant state of adventure and youth, right? So in the same way that super young guys generally aren't ready to settle down because there's other things that have their attention. Similar thing with Peter Pan guy, right? He's always likely to be drawn to the next shiny object, right? So maybe he really likes the pursuit. Maybe he loves dating multiple women. Maybe he loves the romantic infatuation stage of relationship, but he's not really up for doing some of the heavier lifting that in most relationships is part of the requirement on an ongoing basis. So Peter Pan guy might eventually get to the point where he realizes, you know what, this isn't actually a recipe for fulfillment. I don't actually get nourished by constantly dating new people, right? Or just being a hardcore serial monogamist, or having other people fall in love with me, but I never seem to fall in love as deeply back with them, right? At some point, that may not become fulfilling to him, but that may not also be in this lifetime, right? Meaning, I've been to plenty of places, I think about going to ski communities or surfing communities or places where people whose attention is more on the thrill of lifestyle and pleasure. There's plenty of people there that would still have some kind of Peter Pan syndrome, right? And maybe even, right, if we just don't have a value judgment on Peter Pan for a moment, maybe that's actually an authentic path for them, right? Maybe this life for them is going to be about not having commitments they hold down, but actually getting to explore their pleasure and their adventure and going with the moment and being as free as a bird and all that stuff. So all the power to people for whom that's their authentic path. It just might be that that's not going to be fulfilling for you. Or if you've related with a guy that you can say, yeah, he kind of is Peter Pan guy. Has there been some change of heart where he actually gets that there is a freedom that comes through responsibilities, not just for lack of responsibilities, right? It's a form of masculine integration that might have come online for him. Now, if you're with a Peter Pan guy, you can say, look, there's like a certain amount of inness and commitment that I need in a relationship, and I don't see that from you, and that's okay, buddy, but that's really the standard for me continuing to have a place for you in my life until such time that I've actually repartnered, moved on enough that maybe we could be friends again, right? So you have to shepherd some of your inner masculine and clarity in some ways to be able to lay down, these are actually the rules of engagement that work for me. Now, the second type of guy that could eventually become more emotionally available is a guy who has a closed heart, right? And typically this is a guy who's had his heart hurt. Now, this could be in childhood, right? It could be the loss of a sibling or a parent. It could happen in an early love relationship, right? Maybe he found the love of his life when he was 20 years old and she cheated on him, or went with his best friend, or just wasn't as into it as he was, and he somehow got his heart broken and perhaps at an unconscious level made a decision, I'm not going to let myself get hurt like that again, right? Maybe there's part of you that has had experiences like this in childhood or early adulthood or even more recently, where you notice, yeah, I'm not fully willing to risk getting hurt like that again. When you notice someone like this is in front of you, you want to slow things down, because it could be easy for you to want to love that person into opening their heart. But the risk is that you're also setting yourself up for being hurt, right? Because he's ultimately going to decide when that heart is ready to open or not. And if it's not, it's much harder to be in a heart open connection with a guy whose heart isn't open back to you, right? You, in a sense, you don't get the trustworthiness of his heart. Now, even when you're in a relationship with a guy whose heart is open, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out. But there is some sense that you're impacting his heart. So there's probably going to be a level of care to stewarding the connection, right? Even if the connection isn't moving forward, that he cares about the impact that the connection is having. He cares about the impact that he's having on you. When a guy isn't open in his heart, it's much easier for him to kind of just move away, be dismissive, because really it's not impacting him so much at a heart level, right? So the second kind of guy that could become more emotionally available is one who realizes, perhaps through doing some inner work, getting some coaching or some therapy, wow, actually I do want to open my heart more, because I realize that this past significant emotional event is actually determining my future in a way that I don't like, right? I want to actually be in a deeper connection with someone. I want life to impact me. When people say things like, life can't hurt me, that's totally understandable. That normally means something significant enough has happened to them that they don't want to be hurt like that again, right? So there's normally some wisdom. Just in the same way, if you have an injury, the body is going to lock down around that injury, because it says, whoa, major problem. We can't risk this getting hurt like this again. So we're going to stiffen you up. Now, the problem is, if that stiffness remains over the longer term, right? So there's some intelligence. If your heart's gotten hurt, say, whoa, let's lock this down. Let's not let other people in. The danger is if that becomes a fixed reality going forward, right? Just in the same way that your body needs to be supple and be able to move, because that's what it's designed for. Hearts are designed to give and receive love. And so that protection ideally is more of a temporary mechanism, but it's easy for it to solidify into a more permanent, concretized reality. That's dangerous for you if you're relating with that kind of guy. So my general orientation for you would be either be his companion, right? So just be a good friend to him and support system, but don't expect there to be an upgrade into a partner situation, or leave it to other people, right? Leave it to the professionals, leave it to him getting some help from someone that can really do that work with him, so you don't have to be a surrogate for that work and then realize that actually you needed him to love you back in a way that he wasn't available to do, right? We don't want to date the future, we want to date the present. Let me just check my little notebook here for the third type of guy that may eventually become more emotionally available, is a guy who up until now hasn't let go of someone else, right? So it's a guy whose romantic energy is at least somewhat tied up with someone else, right? Could be someone that he previously had a relationship with, an ex. It could just be someone that he's always had feelings for, but it's never materialized into a relationship, or she's never been available to him, or on either side there's not been full structural availability, right? If any of those things are happening, he may at some point release that person from his field, either because he got to be in relationship with them and actually now the relationship is over, or he finally maybe got with the program that if someone keeps you as an option for a long time, you're unlikely to substantively be a priority to them, right? Unless there's a really good structural reason, like they're on the other side of the world, or they they have a family that they can't leave, or maybe they were with someone and as that person was dying perhaps, and ultimately they met you at that time and you realized there was a connection, but they were going to honor their commitments, and in the fullness of time, with that person passing and them grieving the situation and being ready for a relationship, maybe now there's a relationship that's available, right? So again, like all of these things, we need to see something substantive that has shifted. You would need to be able to have a heart-to-heart with this guy where he talks to you about the thing that was the block, right? The thing that he needed to let go, and lets you know in a way that feels true to you, that feels real and substantive to you, that actually he has decided to move on, and he has done the work to move on. He has done some grief work, he has gotten some support, he has hit his journal, he has kind of got close to himself in whatever way he's needed to actually let something go, right? And if needs be, ask direct and pointed questions about that, right? We don't need you to start engaging in trying to relate more ongoingly with a guy who's actually still emotionally unavailable, right? So he's let this thing go either because he's had his opportunity and it's run his course, or they've made it clear they never want to be in a relationship with him and he's finally accepted that, or he's just realized, yeah, you know what, they're not here, so maybe they're never going to be here. Maybe they're always going to be choosing some other person to be in a relationship with, and I don't want to keep wasting my heart in that way. I would much rather relate with someone that is available to relate with me. So those are 3 situations where eventually a guy may become more emotionally available. And I want to underscore what I said earlier. None of this really is about you. Your job is just to ask the direct questions and to notice, is there a standard of engagement that you want to engage with? Everything else is over there on his side of the fence. And if you notice that you have been drawn to relating ongoingly with emotionally unavailable men, that may be a piece of work for you to do, right? You may find it more comfortable when they're not fully available, because part of you knows you don't have to fully risk falling in love and actually building a real relationship, right? Or maybe you know that secretly you get to play a kind of role or have a kind of background power because you're going to be the mentor, the healer, the therapist. So you get to kind of love on guys like that, and it may be genuine, but you actually don't get to receive back a level of love that equates to a real relationship. So you never have to open yourself to receiving that kind of love, right? So maybe this is replicating an unavailable earlier love situation you had, or maybe an unavailable father or mother or guardian, or something that just makes it sort of known so that you can play a role. But this channel really is all about trying to not play a role in relationship, particularly an unconscious role. So if you have been ongoingly attracted to emotionally unavailable men, check out my video on emotionally unavailable men, because I've talked about that before on this channel, and I think it will help you. Please leave me a comment beneath this video. What is your experience? Have you encountered any of these 3 guys? A guy with a closed heart, a guy who's Peter Pan, a guy who's still in love with someone else? What happened? How did it go? Have you tried what I'm talking about here, where you actually aren't going to be in an orientation of mentoring or healing or waiting for a guy? Let me know your experience. Let me know if this is making sense. Please leave me a comment beneath the video, and I'd love to invite you to subscribe. If you haven't yet subscribed, I release videos every week on personal growth, relating, authenticity, and other such topics. I would love to have you with us. This is a great community to be part of. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.